All right, Joe. So we're looking at the World War II panel of EWO, and obviously the first thing of seeing this is just the unbelievable resemblance of the actual statue that you see in, all throughout the world of the World War II image. I think this is what people think of, but the way you did it just brings it to a whole other dimension. And can you just tell us what motivated you, what inspired you to take on this endeavor?
Okay. So again, this is one of the 7 war memorial panels, and as a kid, my father always told me, World War II was different. We had the Pacific Front and the European Front. So as a kid, okay, yeah, I got it. Not until now, when I'm making this memorial, is that I understood what it meant. So real easy to make the Pacific Front. It's literally the raising of the flag at Iwo Jima. Mm-hmm. So it is created with trim screws, the flagpole trim screws. So how do I get the European front and the Pacific front? Pacific front is Iwo Jima. The European front, a little bit more challenging. So there's a gentleman in San Diego, Coronado. He was 100 years old, flew up into a plane, jumped out, and landed in Coronado Beach to celebrate his 100th birthday, along with half of San Diego. So it turns out he was my school teacher in high school. So I dialed him up and said, hey, Mr. Rice, I'm doing this war memorial for World War II. Would you be a part of it? Absolutely. So I brought the panel. There's no screws installed. Brought it to him. It was painted, though. And so he installed the first 101 screws in honor of the 101st Airborne that dropped in Normandy with him in 1944.
Wow. What were his emotions like when he was able to partake in this effort?
You could tell that the 101st Airborne is still very much in him. Mm-hmm. So he literally will go to Normandy and drop in Normandy annually as part of his commemoration. And I know that he really felt a sense of, okay, I'm going to honor my fellow comrades by doing this. And it's literally the 101 screws that I feel like each one, he had a name with it. It wasn't just a matter of he was installing screws, but he literally probably had a comrade's name with that screw attached.
Oh, that's great. Really great. That's awesome. And then what about you personally? Was it a little intimidating taking on this image to be the World War II panel for you, with it being such an iconic symbol?
To an extent. And I think one of the ways that I was able to make it challenging in an accepting way is the fact, how do I get people involved, veterans involved? So having Tom Rice being the European side of it, and then having Tom Crosby, which is actually the Pacific Front, makes this a unique piece. So we lost Tom Rice at 101 last year. Tom Crosby was actually a childhood POW. He was captured by the Japanese when he was 8 years old. They knocked on his door, told him and his family to get provisions for 3 days. They pack up the following day. They take him to a place called Santo Tomas. It's a university in the Philippines. They turned it into an internment camp. So the family actually thought they were going to stay for maybe 3 months, reasonable. A little over 3 years later, War Ministry of Japan gives the order to the Japanese on the Philippine island, execute all prisoners by any means, both military and civilian. They started in the southern part of the Philippines, burned alive about 150 of our soldiers, made their way to different camps, got to Tom Crosby's camp, made preparations, and then 1st Cavalry comes in with about 200 soldiers. They fight with the Japanese. At one point, the Japanese let some of the POWs go, but they had taken over the university as their headquarters. So now they're in a firefight. Japanese were on the inside, firing out. 1st Cav was firing in. 1st Cav didn't know there were children still in that building. So at one point, they found out, they stopped the firefight, but it was an intense firefight for 36 hours. And Tom Crosby was still in that classroom underneath a desk, hoping, praying that he wasn't going to get killed. So they eventually made a negotiation. The Japanese said, if you escort us back to our line, we'll give you back your POWs. So the 1st Cav, locked and loaded, escorted the Japanese back to their line, and then 1st Cav ends up liberating about 3,800 POWs.
Well, and what was amazing about this piece is about the civilian POWs, which I was not aware of. You know, we always know of the military POWs, but how many civilian POWs were with Tom, roughly?
So just in that camp alone, 3,800. It did raise up to about 4,000, and a lot of them were killed off. There is about 500 children in that camp. And he was 11 and literally hours away from being executed.
Wow! After 3 years, nearly 3 years of being
and he
captured.
weighed at 11, he weighed 48 pounds.
My goodness!
Yeah,
and he got to partake in this as well.
And he did, and actually, yes, he did.
And what were those emotions like for him and his family?
It was more of honor. It was really interesting because he actually coined everything. So I said, hey, I knew he was in there for 37 months. Put the 37 screws in. But then he goes, well, I had roughly, 3,700, 38. So each screw represented, his fellow attorneys. But just the fact that, one, that he could partake in it, and then two, that the story follows. So anyone who asks about this, his story along with the other POWs are part of this particular piece.
Well, it's awesome that you're bringing these stories to light through your artwork. So thanks for doing what you do.
Absolutely. And one other keynote is that the flagpole, the sands of Iwo Jima that was collected by my veterans, donated it and made it the shadow effect. So it literally, Iwo Jima is
within
part
this
of it.
exhibit.
Yes.
Right. That's awesome.